Hi, it's Greg Vincent here and welcome to today's webinar on the top 5 costly mistakes property sellers make and how you can avoid them. On today's session, I'm joined by real estate expert Jared McCarthy from McCarthy Estate Agents. Jared, are you there?
Yes, I am, Greg. Good to be here.
Yeah, no, great to have you on the session, Jared. I suppose just for those who are tuning in on today's webinar, I suppose if you could just give them a little bit of a background around how long you've been in real estate, whereabouts you're based, and just a little bit of a bumper sticker around what's brought you to here today.
Sure. Okay. Well, look, Greg, I've been in sales for about 25 years all up, and more particularly, I've been involved in real estate for about 14 to 15 years. I initially bought and sold. I was a bit like, a property trader for a little while. I bought and sold properties, and that kind of got my interest going in the whole real estate place. And I then went into selling properties off the plan, and the properties were actually all in Melbourne, and I was selling them from Sydney to Sydney investors. Now, it was probably there that gave me a great grounding as to what marketing was all about, because really, we were really selling promises to people. It was the marketing that was actually what was attracting people, and obviously they're investors, so that they were interested in returns. But there was actually nothing there. It was basically pictures, floor plans, etc. is what we were presenting to people.
You're selling something that's going to be built that they're not actually able to move into.
That's right. And I bought properties off the plan myself, and it was basically the marketing is what sold us. And look, from there, I then went and joined probably the second largest franchise in the world, and I spent about 3 years as a real estate agent there, and I kind of learned the ropes as to how the traditional real estate was done. And I guess from there in 2003, I opened my own real estate practice because I just wanted to be able to do things my own way and offer a more personal service to my clients. And I guess that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years.
It's interesting you say about coming from the project marketing background. I see that a lot of the new developments taking place within the marketing sector, whether it be floor plans, virtual tours, video, all those different things that we're going to talk about in today's session, they tend to stem from the project marketing sector and then filter down into mainstream from there. So it's great that you've been able to get an insight into some of the things that are already innovative happening in that environment, and then to be able to bring them into the cottage industry part of real estate.
Absolutely, because the dollars were really spent in the project marketing because that's what they had to do. We get the benefit of that, and we learn from what they're doing, and we go, that's a great idea, let's do that on our scale.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So in this session today, we're going to talk about the top 5 costly mistakes that property sellers make. But before we go on to the first mistake, whereabouts are you based? What areas do you tend to service most, and what type of property do you deal with?
Okay. Look, I'm in Rozelle. My office is in Rozelle, and I'm quite involved in the area here. Look, when I'm not doing real estate, probably my first passion is football or soccer. I still actually play myself, Greg, but I've also been involved with coaching some of the junior girls teams, and even for the last couple of years I've been coaching the women's team here locally in Balmain. So my area is really around Rozelle, Balmain, Lilyfield, Leichhardt and Drummoyne, but I guess the inner west is really the area I'm covering.
Yeah, it's a nice part of the world.
Very nice, very, very good part. And look, I guess the type of properties that we sell here tend to be, the median price in our area now is around 950,000 in Rozelle, and a little bit higher in Balmain, and typically Lilyfield, Leichhardt would be over the 900 mark as well.
Wow, and it's really nice getting along the streets there of Balmain and into the cafes and everything. So you're in a very, very nice spot there.
Absolutely. Look, not just cafes, but good pubs as well, and great restaurants.
And I suppose those types of properties that you're marketing, going through and delving into the top 5 costly mistakes that property sellers make, This first one is just so vital when you're launching a property out into the market, and that the first one that we're going to talk about today is missing the market. And it really is a fundamental mistake that a lot of people are making, or real estate agents are making. And can you just give us an insight into what you believe, or why you believe that this is a massive mistake in the way that some properties are marketed?
That's a really great question, missing the market and what brings that about. I guess, look, I'll start with saying that every seller has the right to want a premium price. There's no question about that. And what I think happens is that often sellers will decide on a price and then say, look, what I'll do is I'll bring the price down in a couple of weeks if we don't achieve that. But that's actually exactly where the problem is. For example, in our marketplace, the days on market currently range between about 25 to 35 days. So if you as a seller go, well, look, I'll bring my price down in 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks, that's halfway through the campaign. And that, in fact, you may have actually missed your premium buyers in the first 2 weeks. In fact, you probably have missed your premium buyers because in our marketplace, the buyers are quite sophisticated, as I'm sure they are in many markets. But today, they've got information at their fingertips that just a couple of years ago wasn't possible. So typically, a buyer profile in our area could be in the marketplace for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. I actually know some buyers that have been in the market for a couple of years and they're just sitting waiting for the right property to come along. And when the right property comes along, they will actually make a move pretty quickly on it. So if you're going to make a price adjustment in our marketplace, really you actually need to be doing, if you're going to go down that strategy, miss out on what I call your premium buyers. So what really needs to happen is that we need to come up with a process and a marketing strategy so we can avoid that problem in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does, because you never really get a second chance at making that first impression. And I'd say, when you look at the pool of buyers, you're either swimming in the pool with the buyers or you're actually out on the sidelines. It really is a very, very important part of that initial launching of the property and the process that you go through. And that's where, when we look at this second mistake, and this is something you're touching on just at the end of that, is firstly selecting the wrong method. The method is vitally important from a marketing perspective. Do you suggest different methods for different homes? What's your take on that?
Again, a very good question. Look, in our area, for myself as a principal, as a business, we sell properties in different methods, whether it's private treaty where we put a price on the property, or auction where there is no price on the property. In the end, all I can do is give the pros and cons to the seller, and once they've got the information, they decide what is the best way for them. But I guess a lot of properties sell in our area under the auction process. And look, I'm a big fan of it, I must say. But actually, it's not even the auction that I'm a fan of. I'm a big supporter of not putting a price on a property. And the reason for that is that as soon as you put a price on a property, you're basically dealing with logic. People see the price and start making decisions based on a figure. What I much prefer to do is get buyers through the front door of the property, and certainly there may be some sort of a guide there, I accept that, but basically I want to get them through the front door of the property and then start to discuss price. Like once they're through the front door of the property, and if they're interested in the property, you're actually now talking to them on an emotional level. They've fallen in love with the property, and it's much easier to get a premium price from a buyer once they're in love with something, as opposed to talking from logic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, sometimes what happens is the price predetermines whether or not they're going to inspect the property or not, or even whether or not they're in a situation where if they think that maybe it's of lesser value than they've actually got to spend, and they decide, no, well, look, we're actually got a larger budget, so we'll look at something else, and then they miss out on actually inspecting that home.
Exactly, and that's all done from a logic point of view. The thing we also forget is this, is that most buyers will actually spend between 10 and 15% more than they plan to, because their price point is actually, again, comes from logic. But as soon as they walk through the front door of the right house and the lights go on and they go, this is it, I can see myself living here for the next 10 years, all of a sudden their budget goes out the window and they go, what can I really afford to pay? What's the maximum I could really afford to pay for this property? And that'll only happen once you've got them inside the front door.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually at a property the other day just having a bit of a look around the market, and thank heavens I was only there on my own, Jared. Otherwise, if my wife was there, we would have been moving mountains. We would have been packing cardboard boxes. So I don't think I'll be going looking at houses anymore, especially if there's any chance of that. So, but it's funny how it does work. And I'm sure people tuning into today's webinar have also experienced that as well, that as soon as you find the right place, you'll move everything to try to get it and secure that home. And so the second part of this mistake number 2 is a really important part, is selecting, if you select the wrong agent, it can have a massive impact on the end result as well, can't it?
Certainly. I think that's, let's put it this way, choosing the right agent, well, actually choosing any agent, they will have a direct bearing on the outcome of the sale of your property. So getting the wrong agent can have a seriously negative impact. And I guess if you are, when you are in that position, when you're choosing an agent, there are probably a number of things you need to consider. And one of those things would be, their experience in the area, how many type of sales they've made in the area. And when I say experience, I don't mean somebody that's been there for 2 or 3 years. You really need to be looking at somebody that's been there for 10 years plus. Like they've weathered a few storms, and they can adjust to suit every scenario that comes up. Yeah, I think that's a pretty important thing. There are 2 other things that strike me as well, is that when you're choosing an agent, sometimes people will go with a brand, and they go, oh, we've gone with brand X. Well, brand X doesn't guarantee you anything, because in the end of the day, you're dealing with an individual person who is your agent, and it's the individual person is what's critical here, if that makes sense. Yeah,
because normally what happens, right at that moment of doing the negotiation for the transaction, there's normally like 3 parties involved. There's the buyer, there's the seller, and there's that one agent. No matter how big the company is, it comes down to that one agent who is in the middle of the whole negotiation. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to go with, bigger is better. A lot of agents are in a position now where they can be really small and really innovative, and also the fact that they're actually not under a particular brand, they have the opportunity to adapt very, very quickly to changes and some of the things that are being done out there in the marketing space. So, which I know is something we talk about quite a lot as well. And that's...
Absolutely.
And when we look at this, because I know that Rupert Murdoch said it, he said, I love this phrase from him, he said, it's no longer the big that beats the small, it's the fast that beats the slow. So being an independent like you are, Jared, you're able to embrace things very, very quickly. And that's where also, coming from your project marketing background, this other part of this mistake number 2 is selecting the wrong strategy. I think some people are in a position where they'll go out, put their place on the market, and they'll think that, oh, we'll put it on the market on the quiet, we'll just put it out to the database, and we won't do print, we won't do this, we won't do that. We'll try to minimise the marketing just to see if we can get a result. And at the end of the day, it's not about whether you want the first buyer. At the end of the day, you really want the best buyer, don't you?
Absolutely correct, Greg. And this ties together with the choosing the wrong agent. They're very closely linked, because that happens so often, is that the wrong agent will agree with the seller, And as our friend Tom Penna says, you know what happens there? If I agree with you, we're actually both wrong. But it happens really often that the seller will say, look, why don't I put it on the quiet with no marketing? And the agent says yes, so they can actually get the listing. But it is all about first impressions. You need to make that first impression really strong and send a clear message to the marketplace is this property won't be around for long. If you're interested in this property, you better get onto it now. And if by selling it on the quiet, you're potentially missing out on those best buyers because they may not even see it. And so it's a crucial mistake. And if your agent cannot have a crucial conversation with you about this, they're actually doing you a serious disservice.
Yeah, you get that one chance. Once the property's sold, you then can't turn around and go, oh, sorry, we're not doing it. You've signed the contracts, you're on your way, and you only get that one chance to actually go through it and sell it. And that's where I think this third part, mistake number 3, I can see that this dovetails in really well with the agent, the wrong strategy, and that because I've seen what we're talking about with the agents going out there and doing this, we'll just do it out to the database. And I've seen others that are in a position where they haven't even looked at embracing professional photography or video or some of the other things that you have had experience with previously in the project marketing sector. And when you look at what you can do now and how much more effectively you can market a property, it's just absolutely vital to have this marketing standard, a standard of how you're going to represent someone's property out there, whether it be via print, signboards, or the internet. Would you agree there, Jared?
I definitely would agree with that. Look, I heard this great phrase lately, and I can't get it out of my mind, but basically your marketing needs to be finger-licking good. If it isn't that, you're potentially missing out on buyers. Like everything you do, like from your photography, it needs to be the best it possibly can be. Your photography, your floor plan, your brochures, your signboard, everything that you are putting out in the marketplace, it needs to send a strong message to the buyer, this is a good property, come and have a look at me. Because you're competing with other properties in the marketplace. Our attention span these days is so small because we're actually looking for reasons to dismiss things because we're so busy. It's like with our email, we're looking for reasons not to actually open emails so we can delete them. And the consumer is no different when it comes to properties and having to go to open houses, etc.
Yeah, no, you're dead right there, that we do. We look for reasons to dismiss things, and I'd never actually looked at it that way. There's all these homes that are on the market, and you haven't got time to go around to every single property. You're going to go through the selection process, and that selection process is in fact a deselection process. So that you go, well, I'm not going to go there, I'm not going to go there, I'm not going to go there, and that could be the perfect buyer for that particular property.
Absolutely, and I see that happen so often that people just deselect it, as you say. And look, I guess the next part of this is we also need to know how our consumers responding to our marketing. And these days, with the main portals such as realestate.com, domain.com, we have got instant access to the statistics of what's actually happening with a property. Like how many people are actually looking at, how many people are opening the pages, how many emails we get. Like all of that is available at our fingertips, and it is actually giving us information. I mean, an agent's got two things working for him, particularly if you've got the experience. You've got your instincts, which are absolutely critical, but you've also got, I always double check everything, but I take out all the stats from realestateanddomain.com to back up my instinct. And we need to be able to bring that to the seller so that we can inform them of what's actually going on in the marketplace almost hour by hour.
Well, that way you're not leaving any stone unturned because you're in a situation where you can go out there and say, well, what we've done, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is we've marketed the property. We've got it at a top level standard. And the great thing is that you can do it so much more effectively and inexpensively today compared to what it used to be years ago, like with digital photography and all these things happening now, and some of the software and applications, it just makes it easier to be able to make something look so much better, whether it be via print or whether it be via the internet or whichever way you're going with the marketing. So the marketing standards are absolutely critical, and once you've got that happening and you've got it laid out the right way and you're marketing the property as effectively as you possibly can, then you can come back with some of those statistical information, and as you said, you can then just use your skills, your intuition and the data to be able to come back and help the owners make the right decision.
Yes, indeed. And look, and I think that to me comes under communication, and a good agent needs to be communicating with their seller on a whole lot of levels, like from updating them straight after open houses and giving them the feedback. And look, I think again with a good agent, the good agent will give you the good news and the bad news. Because I've seen too many agents deliver the good news and hold off on the bad news because they're basically afraid to have that conversation. That conversation needs to happen immediately, specifically in our marketplace where something is sold within 4 weeks. You got 28 days, and outside of that, you're actually on the back foot. So it's critical that you have that crucial conversation early, because you can be saving your vendor thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars by doing that. And part of that is reporting back the facts, the statistics of what's actually happening. And again, if you've been doing this for a long time and you do it with every property, you just look at the numbers and you know exactly what to do next.
Yeah.
The numbers through the open houses, the number of contracts you're giving out, the number of emails, the number of conversations you have, and if you track all of those things, you will know what to do next. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's absolutely critical to be able to make those decisions. But the other thing that I remember, from previously, where you'd list a house that was on the market with another agent, and then you tell the seller, well, look, this is the way I see is happening in the market. And they say, well, I just wish the other agent had told us that. If we knew, we could have made a decision around it. That's probably another topic for another conversation, because I think what we need to do with this webinar is we'll move on to the next mistake. And this fourth one is poor presentation. Now, the poor presentation ties into the way that the agent presents the property and represents the property with their marketing and the way that they actually handle the sale. But the other part of it is this poor presentation around how the property is actually presented when people come to have a look at the home. So have you got any thoughts around that, and how someone tuning in on this webinar that may be thinking about selling could improve their presentation and do it inexpensively?
Yeah, look, it starts with the picket fence at the front. It's simple little things that, you might have a couple of pickets that are a bit loose, a bit sideways, and you can fix it in 10 minutes. A nail in there and it's back upright. It may need a paint. And in our properties here, quite often there's, you don't have big gardens out the front, but you might have a little garden in front, and again, you can have that, you could either do it yourself or get a gardener in, or even go up a level and get a landscaper in. Even a simple thing like a pot plant next to the front door, particularly if it's a terrace-style home, it just sets it off really nicely. And it's those little things that make a good first impression. It's when you drive up, you look at the property from the front, and it either speaks to you or it doesn't. I think also that you need to show that the home is being loved, and things like that can be the gutters. It's having the gutters cleaned out. Like sometimes it could be just the fact that you need to wash the house. We quite often recommend to our sellers that they gurney the front of the house if they don't want to paint it, or it's not quite needs paint, but it just from the pollution off cars in the street or anything, it gets dusty. Just a good gurney at the front of the house and down the side of the house can clean it up so that it makes a really good impression.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip.
Yeah, and look, the other thing is once you're inside the house, you look at the things like that need to be looked after, whether the skirting boards need a paint, do the walls need a painting or washing or soap washed or something like that. So you go through each room and you're basically decluttering. You're basically simplifying, and some of the sellers could be there for 20 years and they will have accumulated a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And to give themselves the best opportunity, most of that stuff needs to go. And whether it goes into storage or whatever, and for really inexpensively, they can really improve the sellability of their property without question. But this goes, you go through every single room in the house. You might have done something to the house that was really appealing 5-10 years ago. It could be a certain painting, it might be a feature wall, and maybe it's just time for that to go and just get something quite inexpensive to freshen up those rooms. And that goes right through out to the back of the house. Well, of course, the kitchen area is a real clutter spot, and really what you want to do there is just have one or two things on the countertops, and other than that, have it completely cleared. The stainless steel appliances, give them a good clean up, a nice big vase of flowers or something like that. Simple things like that. It says to the purchaser, this home has been really loved. And that message is very unconscious, and you start to pick up on that vibe and that energy and that love, and you start to warm to the property.
Yeah, it's funny how if you've got friends coming over for dinner, or your friends coming over for a party, you'll go out of your way to make the place look really nice, and they're coming over for some fun. The people who are coming to your home when you're on the market, they're coming around to part with some money, and the better the impression you can give, the better the opportunity for you to actually get them to part with a bit more of their money.
Indeed, and look, sellers can actually do this themselves, or quite often, and I love this part, I actually love doing that for sellers, like doing the whole house. I mean, when I say doing it, we have organized the contractors from landscapers, painters, to people who do the gurning, to new carpet, polishing floorboards, like all the way through the house. And it surprises me how inexpensive it really is. I mean, when saying that, you could end up spending, depending on the property and the size of it, you could spend anywhere from $5,000, I suppose, to $20,000 doing that type of thing. But I know that from just experience, the rewards far exceed what you actually put out in most cases.
Jared, I didn't realise that you actually go to that degree, that extent, which is terrific, because if people are in a position where they're looking to get that done, they could then contact you, you could come out, have a look at their place, just give them an idea of what you feel they may be able to do as a recommendation, and then even recommend them to some people who have done this for other people previously in the area. So that's a really, really good thing. So yeah, hats off to you for that. That's probably one of the first times I've heard of a real estate agent who actually goes that far out of their way to do it. So well done.
Cheers. Apart from preparing the home, we also organise the styling. So we've got some people that will go in and quote on the styling of the property so that it is presented absolutely to its best appealing way. So what I call the styling is basically putting the wrapping and the ribbon on the present.
Great.
And you know what it's like when somebody comes to you and gives you a present and it's got the ribbon and it's got that expensive wrapping on it. You're already excited about what's inside it.
Yeah, you're already impressed, and I got to say that it's good to have someone like that to be able to give you advice around that, because I could tell you, as a bloke, I wouldn't have a clue where to start on those sorts of things. So
that's why I invite in the experts, Greg, because it's not I'll bring in the experts and appreciate their work afterwards.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. But I like the analogy around the ribbon on the present as well. So that brings us to mistake number 5, and this is a really big one. I think that a lot of people, because they've only sell a property every now and then, they're looking for ways that they can maybe cut corners with certain things and cut costs or save money. And what happens is they have these, this mistake number 5, they have these fee assumptions where they feel that maybe the agent who charges the lowest fee will give them the best return on their investment, or that they'll actually end up with more money in their pocket. It's not really the way it works, is it?
No, and if an agent charges a fee and then the seller comes along and manages very easily in one conversation to get them to drop their fee, say, by 10%, which may translate to a few $1,000s, I kind of wonder, Well, if the seller can do it in a heartbeat, isn't it logical that the purchaser is going to do the same thing? But the issue there is that if they manage to get, like not even 10%, but if they manage to get 5%, and or the median price for a property in our area is close to $1 million. So if they get 5% off because the agent wasn't up to stand their ground and their fees, that's as much as $50,000.
Yeah.
So, look, there's the old adage, you get what you pay for. And I think it's really important that the agent is able to have that crucial conversation with a seller and say, look, this is why you're actually paying me the fee I'm asking. And I won't let the cat out of the bag when it comes to selling your property. I'll actually defend the price, and that's what you're paying me for, is to do that, and I'm good at it.
Yeah, and it is just such a vital part of it. There's a lot of people who think, well, let's get the cheap agent right at the beginning, and then what happens is that it's only at the end that they actually get to find out or realise that, hang on, we really did end up getting what we paid for, and they've lost a hell of a lot of money. So the most expensive agent is actually the agent who gets you the lowest amount of money in your pocket. So
exactly,
it's not the agent who charges the largest percentage of fee, it's the agent who gets you the lowest price for your home and still charges you for it. So, you know, there are some agents out there in our industry who I don't like to think that, you know, they actually are in a position where they're going out there and telling people that a house is on the market for X amount of dollars, but they'll take $50,000 less or whatever. But it does happen, and that is not a professional agent. That's not a professional negotiator. That is what they call a transaction agent, and they're just basically there to get the property sold, get the person on their way, and at the end of the day, they're giving the seller's money away. So I really do get frustrated and quite upset when I hear of agents who are actually doing that and telling people what a seller will take for a property.
Oh, that's a shocker. That is, I think that's just. Don't get me started on that.
Yeah,
it's
a total betrayal of trust. That's the way I see it. Yeah,
absolutely is a total betrayal of trust, and that almost brings us back to the point one. The reason that the seller in the first place puts an exorbitant price potentially is because they're afraid. They don't actually trust that the agent is going to go out there and do the right thing for them on every level, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I do is, one of the things I've noticed with sellers is that one of the reasons they want a shortcut on the marketing is that they've spent all the money getting the house ready. So when I go and talk to sellers now, what I explain to them is what they need to do is do a budget for everything and start at the end and work backwards. Too often I see sellers starting with the painting, the new roof, the new deck, and all of this, and then they've run out of money and they can't market the property properly. What they really need to do is put aside the money for the agent and the marketing and then work backwards, because it is the marketing that draws the buyers into the property.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, never thought of that, because, yeah, they'll go in and do all the renovation, try to get it all presented and looking good, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we've got to go on the market, and then there's no money left in the kitty to market the property, and that is a very, very costly mistake if that ever happens.
Indeed. Indeed.
All right, Jared, it was been great catching up with you on today's session. If there's anyone who's got any questions about how to sell or just how they can overcome some of these things, you've been around for a lot of years, you've seen a lot in this area. I'm sure anything that comes up that anyone's got any questions around, if they go and contact you via your website, jaredmccarthy.com, or give you a call, and then you could organise a time for come out and just give them an assessment or give them an idea of what they need to do to prepare their place for sale. Is that how it works?
Absolutely. Look, would love to talk to people about that or give them an appraisal on the property, and there's absolutely no obligation. It's what I do for a living, and I love doing it. And yeah, look, feel free to contact me either through my website or give us a call.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Jared, thanks. And it's been great to have you on today's webinar where we talked about the top 5 costly mistakes property sellers make and how you can avoid them. You really do know your stuff, and for anyone that's out there in your marketplace who's thinking about putting their place on the market, if you're tossing up which agent to call in and you're going to call in a couple of agents, make sure Jared's one of them. At least get a second opinion from Jared because he really does know his stuff. So congratulations on your success and what you're doing out there and how you're helping people out there in the market, Jared. It's really good to see what you've been able to achieve just in the short time that I've known you.
Well, thanks so much for that, Greg. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you, and no doubt we'll catch up again soon.
All right. Okay. We'll see you later, everyone, and thanks again for tuning in on the webinar. We'll catch you then. Bye.
Bye-bye.